This is Kim Newlove, host of the Pharmacist Voice podcast, where I share my journey from pharmacist to voice actor and interview a variety of people who use their voices to advocate for something, educate in some way, or entertain so that you can be inspired to use your voice too. This is episode 121, and you can find the show notes with links to anything mentioned today on my website, thepharmacistvoice.com. Today's episode is an interview with Dr. Michelle Fritsch. She's a pharmacist, entrepreneur, and mentor. She uses her voice in a number of ways, and I'm so excited to share this interview with you. Michelle and I have known each other for about 3.5 years. She's a passionate advocate for entrepreneurship, and she is an educator in many ways. Formerly in academia, but now educating and mentoring healthcare entrepreneurs and also educating her clients about health in retirement. A lot of pharmacists out there are looking to do something other than traditional clinical practice. Michelle is an out-of-the-box thinker who is definitely not in traditional clinical practice. Michelle has been a role model and mentor for me since the 2018 Metapreneurs Summit in Asheville, North Carolina. If you're one of those pharmacists who's looking to do something else, I hope our conversation will inspire you and maybe interest you in looking up Metapreneurs and getting involved. There's a link to Metapreneurs in the show notes. Let me tell you a little more about my guest, then we'll dive right into our interview. Dr. Michelle Fritsch is a board-certified geriatric clinical pharmacist with a passion for healthy aging and education. She is a specialist in medication use in people over 60. She is founder of Retirement Wellness Strategies, LLC, supporting a transition to health and retirement and beyond. She cares for patients so they can live a long, healthy, and purpose-filled life so they can be a hero to their family and others. Michelle works with a broad definition of health: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Dr. Michelle Fritsch. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice podcast. How are you?
I am great. I'm so glad to be here, Kim. Thank you for inviting me.
You are very welcome. We've known each other for a few years now, and you are the first guest that's made it on my show 3 times. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very honored.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, the first 2 times were because of Metapreneurs, of which you are a co-founder. And this time, we're going to be focusing quite a bit on how you use your voice as a clinical pharmacist with your entrepreneurial ventures. You've got a couple of businesses, and we can talk about Metapreneurs too, but hey, let's put your clinical practice first, shall we?
Sounds good.
All right. So I understand that you've got a primary business and a secondary business. Hopefully I'm not saying this wrong, but you've got Retirement Wellness Strategies and you've got MedSmash. Did I get that right?
Well, I have Retirement Wellness Strategies, and MedSmash has now been wrapped into that, so that I can start another business called Propel Comprehensive Wellness.
Oh, serial entrepreneur alert. All right, let's hear all about all of those.
Well, Retirement Wellness Strategies came out of an identified need after years in practice. And so my background is geriatrics and academia. So I taught all sorts of schools, mostly pharmacy schools through the years, but I practiced in different sorts of hospitals and outpatient clinics. And in academia, I got myself into a leadership position where I could no longer have access to patient care, and I realized I had to have that back. So I left the security of an academic leadership position and started a company that was MedSmash. So what I was striving to do, and what I'm still striving to do, is work with people early in geriatrics. And nobody wants to be called that. But I'm thinking like 55 to 70, of which I am one, before the rest of the aging process kicks in. And I want to help them define a solid plan for long-term health so that when they retire, which if they do that at 65, the people have like 30 years left often at that point. Those are fulfilled, active, vital 30 years rather than having a big health decline and just kind of surviving for 30 years. So the first business was meds because I'm a pharmacist, and MASH for mature adults safe at home. And all of the baby boomers said, no, that is not me. You are not going to call me mature adult, older, aging, geriatric. Keep those words far, far away.
That's funny. Hey, when does geriatrics even begin? I mean, is there a definition or for you, have you defined it in a certain age range?
In the literature, it's 65. Now that I'm in my 50s, I would say it started. You just start noticing that your body responds to things differently. And so let's catch it at that point and make plans and decisions and changes that are going to maintain that health and vitality as long as possible.
All right. Thanks for that. Because, as a person that's in her 40s, I look at geriatrics as 65 and up just because of the beers list,
Right. Some people say geriatric is 10 years older than you are, no matter what age you are. And my grandmother died at 97, and she would have said that she was not near old. So what I found was these people that seemed healthy and active and successful in their careers, and then they retire and they have this sharp feels like out of the blue health decline. And so then I talked to people. And so I got to know their stories, and over again, realized it was preventable. So that's why MedSmash. And then that didn't take off. My clients for MedSmash are usually age 90 and above. So it's the people I want to work with. It's their parents, which I love that. But at that point, you're kind of cleaning up messes that have been made with medication regimens rather than preventing anything. So for 2 years, I went on a speaking circuit. I talked to everybody that would talk to me, tried to figure out what terms can I use that express what I'm trying to do. And that's where retirement wellness strategies came in. So retirement is a life event that everybody at least thinks about, even if they don't do it. And we kind of affiliate it with that sort of age range. Wellness is what I want to do. It's not the financial piece, because when people think of retirement planning, usually they think financial. I believe this goes side by side with the financial, focused on the health. And so that's where that came from.
Yeah, that's great that you've got people thinking about that. Having a wellness plan for retirement is something that I have not made a plan for. Seriously. I am 43 years old, and my husband and I, once upon a time, set our retirement age that we would like to retire at as 55. And if that's the case, I think I need to listen to what you're talking about today, because that's about 10 years ahead.
It is. And that's the other piece of it. It's a planning process. And so I've had a number of people say, oh, well, when I retire, I'll call you. That's not planning. We really need, as busy as you are in your final years of your primary occupation, that's when we need to start a planning process.
Yeah, there's a big difference between strategy and crisis. I think a lot of people, like you just said, don't think about what to do until the day they retire. And that really is a crisis. So tell me, what does your company help people who put some forethought into a strategy do?
It's a strategic plan. So just like, if you're in business, you've made all sorts of strategic plans, but this one is about your long-term health. And I break it up into 4 key areas. And I don't know why, but I'm hooked on the word MASH. So the 4 key areas are MASH. So the M is meaningful or purpose. And we can talk more about this as we go, but it's such a critical piece. And what your purpose is, I believe we have a purpose in every phase of life, but what that purpose is in retirement might have nothing really to do with your primary occupation. So I find it fun to uncover that. And then the A is active, and we have a process for planning how you're going to be physically active, because you can't go from sitting behind the desk to climbing a mountain. We'll pull in the experts to make sure that you've got a plan to get your health and your stamina and your fitness where it needs to be to reach your goals, but also mentally active and socially active. There are 16 tools in this process, and the one that has caused executives to actually cry is the social activity tool. When you have to sit down and think about who are the relationships that consume your week right now, and which of those will be actively in your life after you retire. That is so incredibly powerfully eye-opening for a lot of people, because those people that are lined up outside their door and having every lunch and breakfast and after dinner gathering with them are going to continue to be in that workplace and continue to have lunches and dinners and together, but you're not going to be part of that anymore. It's going to carry on and you're not going to be part of it. And if you want to maintain relationships, you're going to have to plan it differently, because they're not just down the hall to grab to go to lunch. So that one has been the most hard for people to really reconcile with. And then my S is sustained. And so that's prevention, identifying someone's individual health risk factors as deeply as we can, and then creating strategies to mitigate those. And then the health is just pulling all of your health information into one place. I mean, we're both pharmacists. How often would you say the doctor actually knows every substance someone takes?
They have that same conversation every time I show up. I mean, really, they want to double check it, because I think that's them admitting they don't know.
Yeah. And there's so many things people can choose on their own, whether it's vitamins or over the counter or supplements or herbal or naturopathic remedies. And it's been my experience that people often don't tell their doctor about those. They think the doctor wants to know about the prescription medicines. And so medication's just one piece, but I pull all of their health information, how they actually kind of live together, so that their doctors have it. And whenever they make decisions, they're making it based on the big picture. Because I'm sure you have too. I've seen so many medical errors, not because the doctor was not doing due diligence. It's because the person didn't give them all the information they needed to make a good decision for them. And then there's a lot of coaching. I think a lot of times people don't know how to approach a doctor visit and how to go in prepared and ask the right question. So all of those components are part of the health. And so when someone finishes the process, they've got a one-page strategic plan of how their objectives and their strategies and their key performance indicators for what's going to make life meaningful and active and sustained and healthy.
I like how you organize information, ma'am.
Thank you.
I love a guide with a plan. I've talked to people, I don't know how many times, about how I love Story Brand by Donald Miller.
Yes, I do too.
Yeah. And he talks about how most people just want a guide with a plan so that they don't have to come up with the solution themselves. I mean, really, you've got to get buy-in from the patient too. But I like how you organize the information. It just makes sense. You're a good guide and you have a plan. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And it gives people an idea of where they are in the process.
Yes. It's got to make sense, and you got to get their buy-in. If it doesn't make sense to them, they're not going to buy in.
Right. So can I share a funny story?
Yes, please.
Something about the way you said that reminded me of a fairly recent client who it was his wife that wanted him to go through the process. And so all of the visits are over a secure telehealth platform, so people don't have to drive anywhere. So I was scheduling the first visit, and what I heard was, I don't have time for this. I've got maybe 15 minutes on Tuesday or whatever. So we scheduled it and we get on the phone and he said, I just have to tell you, I don't want to do this. I don't need to do this. The last thing I want is some other woman yapping at me about what I need to do. I don't want to do this. And I said, one, I think maybe this is something different than what you're envisioning. And we'll do this only as much and for as long as you want to. And here's kind of how it works. And so that first visit was like 15 minutes. And then what I do is I give them a worksheet, sort of, to collect some information that we will talk about at the next visit. And so the next one was maybe 20 minutes. And by the fifth one, we were meeting for an hour at a time. And he said, "Oh my goodness, you are like my therapy. I look so forward to these discussions." Like,
Oh,
yes.
good.
It was exciting. And I've had a few executives who were, retirement is this nebulous thing somewhere in the future. I don't know when it'll be. And once we can catch the glimpse and the picture of what it's going to look like, I've had people move up their retirement by 6 months and more, because now I think of it like, if you've got a dirty windshield and you're behind the wheel of the car, you don't want to push the gas because you can't see where you're going. And as soon as we clear the windshield and it's a beautiful sunny day ahead of you and you can't wait to get there, you're going to push the accelerator. And that's what I'm finding. Once people clear the mud and they can picture retirement and it's not scary and it could be awesome, then they're ready to get there.
I like that analogy you just made. That is great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I understand when you were explaining that just now, you were saying that the gentleman started with 15 minutes. He really dug his heels in. He was resisting. And then 20 minutes, well, it's a small gain, but he's buying into it and so on. What do you think prevents them from going for a full hour the first time? Like, what is it what's their barrier to signing up?
I don't think it's on people's radar screen that this is something important. I mean, retirement's in the top 10 most stressful things that we do in our lives, marriage and kids and whatever. It's the top 10. But there's, other than get your financial affairs in order, there's not, that I can find, really a process for preparing to be healthy. And so I think the uphill battle I've been fighting is, how do I get people to see how important that is and that it can make a huge difference in what comes after leaving your job. I'm finding most people I talk to are so consumed by their succession plans. They probably have a few more things that they want to get done. But before I retire, I want this project to launch, or I want this project to end, or whatever. They're so focused in those places that this is just not a concept. And so I'm working to make this a concept for people.
It almost reminded me for just a second of a toddler that you're taking their favorite toy from. So, I think you and I had talked once about men, especially, get really wrapped up in their identity. When they leave their job, they aren't the boss anymore. They are just their spouse's equal partner. And maybe they like it, maybe they don't. But you're asking them to think about giving up their favorite toy or whatever, and they're not ready. So that's kind of what it reminded me of. And I was just wondering if you might come up with that response when I asked, what's holding them back?
It is a lot like that. And this coming week, I'm going to be speaking at a concierge physician conference. And the really, really difficult concept we're going to talk about is giving up your license.
Oh, okay.
I mean, as pharmacists and as lawyers, I find that licensed professionals who worked so hard for that license, and that license gives them a different sort of credibility in their community. It's opened so many doors for them. Part of retirement is walking away from that license, and that makes it even more complicated. Or you and I are entrepreneurs. And so when you've built the business, that's your baby. To
You
walk
bet it
away
is.
from it and sell it is a really, really complex life event. One of the groups that I'm part of is called Exit Planning Exchange. And it's all the professionals that are involved when someone does sell a business. And so I'm bringing in that human health element to that. One, you don't want the person selling their business to get so stressed out they have a heart attack, because that is a complex process to sell your business. So we can work on ways for them to maintain their health and their stress level throughout the process, but then help them prepare for what is going to come next. Even though this business has been everything to you, there's so much left that could happen next. So how do we get you excited about that?
This is a very specific business. Now, I understand you're very passionate about it. I can see it in your face as we're talking. I can hear it in your voice. But I got to ask, what's your why? Why this? Why did you get passionate about helping? Is it just men? You're helping men around the retirement age with wellness, or is it all genders?
It's not just men. And I love it most when it's couples, when they're doing this and planning this together. But my reason is I realize I can influence only a small number of people. But as I went through my career and I saw the hospital executives and I saw the successful physicians and I saw the lawyers and I saw the whoever, and how much they're respected in their communities and the experiences they've had, the insights that they've gained. And then I've seen so many of them go home and binge Netflix. And all of that beautiful knowledge and skill and influence is not used. And so my deepest why is if I can influence them to use their influence for whatever excites them and what comes next, then I've, exponentially multiplied the impact that enhancing people's health can have.
Very good. That's a great why. If you are helping people to embrace their retirement years, which you have seen people clearly not embrace, sitting around watching Netflix is not a retirement occupation. I think you've helped. So kudos to you for finding something you're passionate about and making an impact.
Just some of my absolute favorite stories. One man was sort of averse to the whole purpose part. And so finally got him to do it. And he is an engineer, but he's an automobile executive up in the Detroit, the car area. And so he realized how much the climate change issues are bothering him. And he really wants to do something about it. And so he went out and bought some solar panels at Harbor Freight. And he's been just experimenting with how do they work. All of his neighbors come over and they charge their cell phones off of his solar panels now. But he's trying to figure out where does he fit into the climate issues world when he leaves his primary occupation. And now he's excited about it. He's even looking at becoming on a board of directors of a nonprofit with a climate issue, just to kind of get the behind the scenes and start educating himself. So he comes out of the gate running when he retires. And my absolute most favorite story is a man who's an airline executive and nearing retirement, but the family thought he was nearing retirement more than he thought he was nearing retirement. And he's still sort of easing out, which can be a great thing. But he realized he's got a passion for kids, and he recognizes that so much of the neurologic development happens right after a child is born. And that skin time, that bonding time is so critical to their later life. So he goes to the neonatal ICU and skin times babies.
Aw.
Isn't that awesome? Has nothing to do with airlines.
And he loves it, I bet.
Oh, yes.
That's cool.
And then another man, at one point in his life, he'd considered being a pastor. And that's not where he ended up. But he recognizes there's so much he could do in his faith community when his time is freed up. And so now he's starting to think along those lines and where and how does he want to plug in. But he's kind of got his place that he's going to go that's going to bring him great fulfillment.
Great stories.
You asked about women. I've not worked with that many women through the whole process. What I have found so far is more often women will come and say, okay, I've got this and this and this figured out, but I really want to think about this part. Can you help me with this part? And so it's a different approach. And I don't mean to be overly generalizing, because I hate it when people do that. But most of the time women will say, yeah, oh yeah, I've done this and this, maybe not that other part. And they tend to do it much earlier. And men are kind of right up against the day of retirement. And they're like, oh, I've got it figured out. And like, well, what are you going to do? And then there's really kind of nothing there. And those are the people to go from being so recognized and in demand for what you do. You know, people lined up outside your door all day long, and a big party on Friday, and then crickets on Monday, I am finding is hugely destructive to mental health for a lot of people that weren't expecting it. And in some cases, that leads to a cycle of despair and anger. And the suicide rate in that population is going up. So that's my other big why, is that can't be allowed to happen.
Wow, good point. I didn't know about the suicide rate is it just men who are at retirement?
It's more men. It's kind of 55 to 75-ish. The other thing that's going way up is the divorce rate. And I'm finding in going through the tools that, you know, when people are newlyweds or they're getting married, they talk about their future and they plan it all and they're on the same page. And then years of life happen and they get to retirement and realize they haven't talked about this in far too long and they now want different things. If we could have those conversations a little bit earlier, I think it could allow for those differences to come out and be discussed and be planned for.
Oh, there's so many men that don't like to talk about their feelings. How do you get men to talk about their feelings?
I don't know what the how is, but throughout my life as a clinician, I have found once I get to know people, they tell me a lot of things. And so that's a blessing, and I'll take it. And after people get to know me, we tend to be able to talk through those sorts of things.
Very good. Hey, I've always said that's the sign of a good pharmacist. If you can become immediately over familiar with a patient, that's the sign of a great pharmacist, right? Because people will come up to you and show you some part of their body and say, do you know what this is? Or I have this. Do you have a Band-Aid that'll fit it? You know, things like that.
For whatever reason, people have always been comfortable sharing things with me. And, you know, I've walked in the room and they've dropped their pants. What is this? It's like, okay. So one of the ways that I trained pharmacy students, we actually had an award for this called the Purple Patient Award.
Oh.
So from the time they entered pharmacy school, we talked about the importance of utmost respect for every patient in every situation. And so mind your face. You know, if a patient says something that surprises you, if they take their pants down, if whatever, you mind your face. You are there to care for that person, no matter what happens. So the Purple Patient Award was you walk into the room and they're naked, painted purple. You're going to mind your face and you're going to take perfect care of them regardless of. And so for the student that best could kind of maintain that very professional environment and deeply care for each patient, they got the Purple Patient Award, and I gave them a purple troll.
I love it. That's cool. That's a very unique award.
Yes, it is.
If you ever find that on somebody's LinkedIn profile, I would like to see that.
You'll know what it is.
I'll know what it is. I know it came from you then. Now, when you were developing your ideal client, were you kind of focusing on men at first, or was it women also, or couples? I mean, who at first was your ideal client and who has become your client?
So my ideal client has a name, an age, a family status, and everything, but it is a man who started a business and is now looking at selling it, who is married, who has kids that are kind of scattered. And so they're not really like a tight family unit walking through this together and facing the reality of letting that business go and doing whatever life is bringing next.
Very good. Well, at this point, I would like to kind of pivot and talk about how you use your voice in a number of ways on your website. You are a writer for a blog, and you appear in several videos on your website. And I think this would be a great time to kind of talk about all these things that folks can find on your website. And your website is
retirewellness.com.
So, yeah, tell me about your speaking engagements, your blog, these videos.
I love to talk to people. And after overcoming some issues early as a student where I was told I should never speak in public, I worked really hard to develop the ability to speak in public. And now I have 2 scheduled videos I create every week. One around retirement wellness strategies and that sort of health, and one during the pandemic that's more about the latest science that has come out that week, just to provide updates, because clients and friends were asking, how do I sort through all the information that's out there? And so I enjoy that very much. I have found video to be a way to be able to express what I want to express to people. And so you'll find a number. In addition, I wrote blogs for a really long time, and then that became a book. And so I've enjoyed writing all of these things as well.
Tell me, what's the name of your book? Where can it be found?
Preventive Maintenance for a High Mileage Life. It has a car on the cover. I know people aren't going to see the cover, but it has a car on the cover. And the idea is, just as you maintain your car and you plan the strategic maintenance of your car, how can you do that for yourself? And it's not just your physical health. Do you have high blood pressure or diabetes? But it's strategically thinking about and managing your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, your social health. And so the book dives into each of those important areas. And you can find it on Amazon or on my website.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. If you go on my website, I'll send you a signed copy.
Oh, there you go. That's motivation. Well, and then also you do a lot of speaking gigs. I understand from earlier in our interview here, you were saying that you enjoy public speaking. Do you have, I know you mentioned you were in academia too. So are you teaching right now, or what are your speaking gigs like?
Well, next week is the concierge physician platform. So that will be wonderful. But podcasts, lately, a lot of it has been for financial planners and estate planning attorneys, because we are serving the same population. And so when I speak for them, it introduces my services to their clients, but it also helps their clients see that they're interested in a more holistic version of them as clients. So those have been the most frequent recently, and then Metapreneurs last weekend.
Can you talk a little bit about Metapreneurs?
So it started when I left academia to become an entrepreneur, and Sue Poll and Anna Garrett had left their regular posts and become entrepreneurs. And the 3 of us found each other and found that we didn't learn anything about business development in pharmacy school. But by each being on this path, when one of us would hit a barrier, typically one of the others had already overcome that barrier. And who was helping whom changed, each time something came up. And we realized if the 3 of us can be that big of a resource for each other, imagine if all of the other entrepreneurial healthcare people were able to come together and support each other like that. So that's exactly what that's about. It's like the art of medicine, and preneurs like entrepreneurs smushed together.
Very good. Yes, I was there for all 3 conferences and I loved them. It really helped me funnel down my ideas into one. I got some CE, which was a nice bonus, and networking with people and finding future podcast guests. I mean,
Yes.
So much good has come out of that conference for me. Yep.
I remember some of those early conversations when you were honing your idea, and oh my goodness, how far you have come in what feels like a very short period of time.
Yes, I blinked and 3 years went by.
Exactly.
But yes, it was definitely worth going to. Anybody listening, I would highly recommend if you are a pharmacist or a healthcare provider who's looking at starting your own business, Metapreneurs is a great place to start.
Thank you. Thank you. We want to be there. If you look at our new logo, it's all about someone gave me this analogy to leadership years ago, and it just really stuck with me that you climb the ladder and you reach behind and you pull someone else up to where you are, and then you boost them up as high as you can reach, and then they'll reach behind and grab the next person, and that's how we all move forward together.
I felt like I was kind of towards the top at the last Metapreneurs. Not saying that I'm at the top of, all entrepreneurs everywhere, but, like I made it up the ladder and then I had the opportunity to talk to other people about their ideas and just ask, have you considered this? Or why don't you do that? Just hearing in their voice what they're passionate about. They may not even realize it until you point it out to them. Hey, have you thought about turning that into a business? It even happened to me. I was talking to people about podcasting, which is not something I brought up myself. People would ask me questions, and it almost seems like there's going to be a market for a pharmacist who can start pharmacist podcasts or podcasts for pharmacists. Because, I've done this for 100 and some episodes already. I can certainly do it. But the question is, can I do it for other people? And I'm just saying, there's an interest. And why didn't I think of that before? Somebody pointed it out to me. It might be time to start a podcast launching business for pharmacists. What do you think?
I love it. I think there definitely is. And I think there's so much noise in the world that to have a pharmacist sharing information that can be trusted there's a huge need for that.
Yes, I've found that the learning curve can be cut by going to a coach or a professional. I don't know how much coaching you've gotten, but I think this would be a good opportunity to share that we, as entrepreneurs, we don't know how to do all the things when we get started. What are some of your experiences with coaching?
Well, my coaching started actually when I was in academia, and I had hired 19 people and, they're new faculty members and need a lot of development. And on my own, nothing related to the school, just on my own, I hired a coach to allow me to be better. And then that coach, when I left academia, kind of went with me and really was integral, did I say that right, to starting my business, because I did not know. I knew I wanted to do it. I knew what I wanted to do, but all of those logistics, he played a huge role. And then I would say right now, I'm probably working with 3 coaches, but for very specific things. And so some of them are one-on-one coaches, and some of them are people that have programs that I pay to have access to their programs and learn from their content. But it's almost like a revolving door, because as the business grows, as you grow as an individual, your needs change. And then you're always networking. And so you learn somebody that can help you with some piece that maybe you didn't even know you needed help with. And so I like that aspect of it, that it's always changing based on sort of where things are headed.
You seem like one of those people that enjoys continuously learning. And I would say that, yeah, entrepreneurs, we're like that, aren't we?
We're like sponges. Tell me more. Teach me more.
Yes. Michelle, before we wrap up our interview, I'd like to know a little bit about what's next. You mentioned something called Propel. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I would love to. So Propel is the next venture. With retirement wellness strategies, that's a more intensive one-on-one process. And so I'm limited how many clients I can have at a time. And during COVID, I was talking with a colleague who's an aging life care manager. And so what she does is usually kind of after retirement, once someone or their spouse starts to see health decline, they are the experts that can help you navigate that healthcare setting, figure out what your insurance pays for, help you find a rehab facility, modify your home, find someone to modify your home, whatever you need in those next phases They are the experts in successful aging. And so she and I came together and started Propel Comprehensive Wellness. It's more of a do-it-yourself version of what each of us does. And so people will have an opportunity to learn the steps of our processes, everything from planning retirement, identifying that purpose in the next phase of life, because that is what's keenly tied to the health, through the retirement itself, and through all the rest of life, whatever situations health-wise you find yourself facing. And so we've spent all of COVID making videos and workbooks that we're very excited to be launching here in the next couple of months. And one of my favorite pieces is Propel, stands for Powerful Retirement Options for a Purpose-Filled, Engaged Life.
Nice acronym.
Thank you. So we do hope to have that out soon. And it's something that will be as easy as like a monthly subscription where you get a different module with videos and workbooks each month. And it just guides you step by step through this process.
Wow. I'm curious, how are you marketing it, or haven't you started that yet?
We have had some focus groups to start kind of figuring that out. And we've got an amazing marketing branding person who's helping us, but it's not out the door just yet. So still a lot of details we're working through.
Wow. Well, aren't you just the serial entrepreneur?
It made sense because it is limited how many people I can help one-on-one.
Yep.
But there are 15,000 people turning 65 every day right now. So if we can get this in the hands of a lot of people that have this level of support to help them plan so that when things happen in life, they're like, oh, I know what to do. I know who to call. I know I've already made some of these decisions. It's in my workbook. I know how to handle this. That would be awesome.
Very good. Well, I wish you good luck on this new venture. I hope it goes extremely well for you. The whole one-to-many concept is a great business model, and I hope it is very successful for you. I guess I'll have to have you back a fourth time to talk about it when it's a big success.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Michelle, is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap this up?
I thank you again. What an honor to be here for the third time. And you know that I love to talk about these things. So thanks for this platform.
You're very welcome. And I'll put links to anything you mentioned in the show notes. Take care, and I hope to see you around soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle Fritsch, for being my guest on the Pharmacist Voice podcast. I'd like to share just a couple of takeaways from the interview. 1, just like Michelle did, if you see a need and you have a passion for helping people with that need, you have the makings of an entrepreneur. And 2, you learn as you go. You don't have to know everything when you first get started. Entrepreneurs learn from coaches and they learn from others. Entrepreneurs are continuous learners. Find your passion, keep learning, and use your voice. Thank you for listening to episode 121 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Please visit thepharmacistvoice.com to read the show notes. Links to Dr. Michelle Fritsch, Metapreneurs, retirement wellness strategies, and more are in those show notes. Thank you again for listening.